If you watch my last building video that looked at the Ursine cellar, I talked about in that video how I took the Lego Castle of Morcia set and I basically split up each of those modules and converted them into individual buildings for my game. Now for the Ursine cellar, I took one of the two very small modules at the front of the castle and I converted it into a cellar just by throwing a few barrels in and kind of pretending that there's more of the building underground than what you see. But of course, that castle has a second small module at the front of it, and that is the module that I took and I converted into this building that you see right here. I think Lego was going for like a little dungeon sort of thing, but that didn't really make much sense because there was already a full-on prison tower in that same castle build. And it certainly doesn't make sense for my game because if you watch my factions video on the Cusped Kingdom, they don't really capture many prisoners anyway, so there's no point in giving them 2 dungeons or 2 prisons. So that means that this module requires a little bit of redesigning on my part. And like the Ursine cellar, I'm going to imply that there's a little bit more to the building underground, but I'm not just going to make this another cellar, because this building actually has to fulfill a very specific purpose for the Kingdom player. This is going to be the building that trains that player's horses. And that means I've got to find a way to stuff some horses into this little thing. Greetings, Realm Lords, COR Bricks here, and thank you for joining me as we look at our next building that the Kingdom player can make in my massive Lego wargame. So if you watch my short and you said that this was a stable of some sort, then you are correct. Now let's take a closer look at what makes a building like this a stable. Now, just like with the Ursine cellar, this building is really built in 2 different configurations. So one will be on that raised base plate, and the other will just be directly onto the playing field. And so this means that our step 1 of this building is going to be, once again, a way to align it onto the battlefield when it is not being built onto that raised base plate. And that's the primary reason why the base of this building is actually not centered on those 4 spaces. It's actually off to one side. This is the opposite side that the Ursine cellar is on, and otherwise, though, they're more or less identical. Now once we get to step 2 of this building, it starts to get very different from the Ursine cellar. And that's because in step 2, I need to figure out a way to get horses into this building. Now I can't fit an entire Lego horse in here for obvious reasons, so instead what I've got to do is I've got to create the illusion that there's an entire horse in there. So I will just be putting the highest point of the horse, its head, into this building, with the implication that there's more if you go down. All I've done to create the illusion of a horse being in here is I basically put the horse helmets down into the building, and I slipped in a 1x2 plate and 1x2 tile. They're both white into that mask to make it look like there's a horse head underneath. So we have this idea that these stables are a little bit bigger than they look. They're still very cramped stables for horses, but let's be honest, horses are gonna be heavily mistreated in this game anyway, so we might as well start mistreating them inside their building. Once our horses are inside, just like our Ursine cellar had a bear head on the front, we need to put an animal head at the front of this building too. It's not going to be a bear though, because the Ursaws aren't the royal family that controls this building. Instead, we need the crest of Sir Simon Oblive, who, since he's based on Sir Raskus from Lego Knight's Kingdom, has a monkey as his emblem. And so I built this little brick-built monkey head on the front. I'm sure I took this head from somewhere. I can't remember where I saw it though. I don't think I came up with it myself. But boy oh boy, if you Google Lego monkey head or Lego monkey now, it's just impossible to find anything. So if you know where I got this head design from, let me know in the comments below because I certainly can't remember. Now with that monkey head at the front of the stable, that means our stables need a fancy name. Just like the Ursine cellar has Ursine for bear, our stables are going to be the Simian stables, with Simian once again being a Latin root for monkey. Now, why associate a monkey with the stables? Why not associate, a horse? Well, that's for 2 reasons. So reason number 1 is I don't have a horse-themed knight on the Cusped Kingdom faction. That might come as a bit of shock to you if you're a fan of Knight's Kingdom 2, because there was a horse knight in that theme. It was Sir, what was his name? Sir Kentis was the original name of him. But he doesn't get this building because, unfortunately for the Cusped Kingdom, in the Circle of Realms, that knight is no longer with the kingdom. He has actually joined a different faction. And really, reason number 2 is just, I've got lore that explains it, of course. So let's talk a little bit about this monkey head and the Oblive family. Now, the Oblives are a family that is obsessed with animals. This is the family that trains the hunting dogs for the Cusped Kingdom. They train the horses for the kingdom. They tame and train all sorts of animals. They've got menageries set up in their territory where people can see a wide variety of creatures that they have tamed and subdued. And because the Oblives have always been so fascinated and associated with their eclectic assortment of exotic animals, they have taken on the monkey as the symbol of their house, the symbol of their family. Because the monkey is not native to this region of Morcia in the Circle of Realms, and thus it's a symbol of the exotic command over nature that the Oblives have. So yeah, that's basically why we have the simian stables instead of, say, I don't know, equine stables. But I digress. Let's get back to our build here. Before we finish step 2 of this building, to make sure it will lock very nicely into step 3, I have to make the top of step 2 basically all tile, with the exception of a few studs to lock in that next level. But because of the awkward way this building is laid out, I have a slight gap here in between my tiles, and that'll be something that I address in the top level. The top part of the build is basically identical to the Ursine cellar, it's just slightly inverted. The simian stables also have a mounted crossbow at their top, which means that just like with the Ursine cellar, you can stand a unit on top of this building and they can shoot at people down below using that crossbow. Now, if you remember, I still have to address that little gap in between the tiles with this step, so I'm gonna add a simple 1x1 plate here to make it all come together and look very nicely when the building is all finished. All right, well, that is it for our simian stables. They are built in all their glory. I think they do a good enough job of conveying the monkey crest with that head on the front. And then if we look off to the sides, we can see our horses kind of poking their faces through. The only thing I really don't like about my horses in this build is that my horses don't have any eyeballs, but I can't really think of anything good to do about that. I'm not gonna take a marker and draw them in. That kind of feels like cheating with the build.
I'll hold these guys off.
But I don't know, maybe there's a printed tile out there that can get the job done for me that Lego's made before, but I just don't know of it. Like the Ursine cellar, the simian stables are a Tech Age 2 building and they require 3 builders to be built. It has 6 siege armor to protect it from damage, and it costs 400 gold to be built. The building is built out of 3 steps, and each of those individual steps have 4 hit points, bringing it to a total of 12 health. And if it's actually built on that raised base plate, it's only going to be 8 because it's skipping step 1. Now, unlike the Ursine cellar, this building does not have a whole lot of cool abilities or unique abilities, so I'm sorry if I felt like I tricked you in the short video when I asked for different abilities that it has. Basically, it's got a mounted crossbow on the top, so you can use that crossbow just like you could with the Ursine cellar. And like most kingdom buildings, it can either be built on a raised base plate in that big castle configuration, or you can just plop it like directly down on the field, something like this, to add it into the game board directly. As always, my friends, don't forget, if you want to actually see the exact wording on these abilities and the stats and all that, you can check it out at www.circleofrealms.com. And of course, in the description, I'll get the link that goes straight to this building if you want to look at its details there. Now, even though this building is kind of light on abilities, it's a very important building because it makes a lot of units for the kingdom player. And the comments from my short were more or less exactly on the money. It does create horses for the kingdom's cavalry, so here's one of them right here, but it makes, let me think. It makes 5 different horses, 1 for each of the hero knights to ride on the kingdom faction, plus of course a horse for their king. And we'll definitely talk about the horses in a later video. We can learn how horses work in general and what makes horses so valuable on the battlefield and so prone to being just murdered by enemy units because they are a hot target in fights. Now, the other thing that you may guess, because we have that monkey face on the front, is because it's the simian stables, it's got to make monkey knights of some sort, right? We've got the bear knights, we've got the hawk knights. Well, we don't exactly have monkey knights. Instead, we have monkey spearmen. And there's only 2 of these guys instead of there being 3 of them. But they're definitely worth it because, you know, they can actually attack units with a spear. Now, there is still one true monkey knight that's produced here, and that is the hero, Sir Simon Obli. And Simon's a fun hero. We'll definitely do another video about him in the future because Simon is not the fastest of heroes like Prince Jalen. He's not very strong like Lord Lysander or Saw, but he has an affinity for nature, he has an affinity for animals, and he's a bit of a trickster. So he has some fairly unique abilities that we'll see when we look into him. And if you want to see what those abilities are, as well as other content in the Circle of Realms, like my last playthrough and stuff like that, make sure you're subscribed to this channel so you can check out these videos in the future. And of course, if you can't wait for me to put out the video on Sir Simon, remember, if you join the basic tier of my Patreon, which is linked below, you get full access to the website Circle of Realms, where you can see not only everything about the Cusped Kingdom, but the other 3 factions that I have finished and fully updated as well. But that just about wraps up the Simian Stables, so thank you for watching, my friends. Be happy, be healthy, be well, and I'll see you next time here in the Circle of Realms.